Let's open an image from our exercise files folder. Go to the main menu, File, and Open. I will go to my exercise files folder and select the file named Water. When our image opens up, we can see at the window bar that our image is not RGB or CMYK, it is a grayscale image. As we had mentioned in an earlier session, this means that each pixel in the image is represented by 1 byte and it can have the value between 0 and 255, that is, a value between black and white. Another thing we see is that the orientation in this image is off. To fix this, let's go to our main menu, and under Image, we will find the option for Image Rotation. By hovering over this option, we will get the choices for 180-degree rotation, 90-degree clockwise rotation, 90-degree counterclockwise rotation, and this is also where we have the option to flip an image horizontally or vertically. For now, we just want our image to rotate by 90 degrees clockwise, so I will select 90 CW for clockwise, and our image is now horizontal and oriented properly. What you may notice is that the image has a white border around it from when it was scanned in, so we want to get rid of that. Let's go to our toolbar and select the crop tool. It is the 5th tool down from the top. If that location doesn't have the crop tool available and something else is currently available in that spot, you can click and hold and you will be able to see all the tools available at that location. You can simply select the crop tool, which looks like a black little box with a diagonal line going through it. With the crop tool selected, let's click and drag around our image to frame the area we want to keep and let go of the mouse. You should end up with a selection like this where everything outside of our selection is grayed out. That's the part of the image that we will be getting rid of as soon as we commit to our selection. Before we commit, we can adjust the cropping area by hovering over the edges of the selection and dragging in any direction until we're happy with what we will be keeping and what we will be getting rid of. Alternatively, you can click inside the selected area and move around the bounding box you have created. Keep in mind that while we're in this mode, we're kind of stuck from being able to use any other tools. If we try to do any other operations, a dialog window will come up asking whether we want to crop the image, and at that moment we have to answer crop, don't crop, or cancel. Cancel will get you out of any difficult situations where you didn't intend to do something yet, so I will click cancel to return to where I was. Now, being in this crop mode, let's look at the top area under our main menu at the control bar. It seems that the crop tool has the option for delete or hide the cropped area. This is actually a pretty cool thing. Instead of cropping the unnecessary areas and deleting them, it would be better to have them just hide outside of our image so we can recover them later if we need them. But there is a problem. These options are grayed out and we can't use them. The reason is that we're actually working in the background layer of our document. By default, every Photoshop document comes with a background layer which is locked, and it doesn't always behave like a normal layer. You can't move it around, and it will often prohibit us from doing other things to it, like what we want to do now, crop but keep our cropped areas hidden. So let's get out of this crop mode. You can press Escape on your keyboard, or go here to the top right and click on the Stop button, or you can right-click on your canvas and select Cancel. Let's go to our Layers window. Notice there is a little lock on the background layer. Let's double-click on the background layer and then hit Enter. It is now unlocked. Let's go back to the crop tool, select our area like before, and now let's select the option to hide as opposed to delete the cropped area. You can now either click on this check mark on the top right area of your control bar, or double click on your crop area, or just hit return on your keyboard to execute your crop. Now that we've cropped our image, let's go to the toolbar, grab the Move tool, that's the topmost tool available, and with our layer selected, let's click and drag our image around. You can see that we have not lost what we previously cropped because we chose to hide that information and not delete it. This gives you much more flexibility in your compositions since you can adjust how your layers are framed within the canvas window. Now, I made a pretty drastic crop here where I got rid of a lot of my image, so I want to actually go back to where I had rotated my image but before I cropped it. If I try to do undo in Photoshop by clicking on Command Z, you will only be able to go back one step. Doing Command Z again will execute a redo of the last action you performed. So Command Z is useful in showing us the last change we made and perhaps assisting us in deciding whether the last thing we did made the image better or not, but it doesn't really serve the purpose of going back in history. Photoshop has a history window though, and it can give us more control over going back in our progress. If you don't have a history window open in your interface, you can go to Window on the main menu and select History. We can move or resize this window, and we can go over all the steps we made since we first opened our document. I can click on the previous dates of my work and decide how far back I want to go. Once I decide how far back I want to be, I can continue working, which will discard those unwanted steps I have undone in the history window. Now, I will go back to crop once more, but this time I don't want to get rid of as much of my image as I did before. I just want to remove that white border, which is an artifact of the scanning process. So I will pick up my crop tool, I check on the control bar that I have hide selected, and I will select the crop area. Then hit return on the keyboard, and we're done with this step of our process. Now let's see how we can navigate our image. The current view is not really very flexible for us. We need to be able to go into the image, as we will often need very high precision for changes we want to make. There are a few ways to do this. On the toolbar, there is a zoom tool. It looks like a magnifying glass. If you select this tool, you can select areas of your image to zoom into. With the zoom tool, you can simply click and let go as many times as you wish, or click and drag until you are satisfied with the zoom level. Once you have zoomed into your image, you could use the scroll bars of the canvas window to go up or down and left or right, but this is not very efficient. You can go to the toolbox and select the hand tool. This will allow you to click and drag around the image. A more efficient way to zoom into your image is by going to the keyboard and pressing Command and plus at the same time. As you hold the Command key down, every time you press the plus key, you will zoom further into the image. Similarly, to zoom out of the image, as you hold the Command key down on the keyboard, you need to press the minus key. So Command plus goes into the image, Command minus out of the image. Once you have zoomed in, instead of going to the toolbar to pick the hand tool, you can press down the spacebar on your keyboard, which will convert your cursor to the hand tool. With your mouse and while still holding down the spacebar, you can click and drag around the image. This is particularly important because you don't want to have to switch tools if you're in the middle of a delicate manipulation. The Command plus or minus and the spacebar techniques are typically available to you even when you're in a locked mode, such as the cropping mode that we encountered earlier. Other features and tools may not be available when you're in certain modes, but these two navigation techniques are typically still enabled, and they allow you to have control and awareness of how your image may change in every operation you're examining and considering to perform. Another option you have for navigating around your image hides under Window on the main menu and Navigator. This will bring up the Navigator window, which shows you a thumbnail of your full image and a colored rectangle over it, indicating which part of the image is currently visible in the canvas window. With the slide bar below, you can zoom in and out of the image, and by clicking and dragging around the colored rectangle, you can navigate through different areas of the image, which will appear on the canvas window. Regardless of zoom level, you can always press Command 0 on your keyboard to bring your image to fit into your canvas as large as it possibly can while staying in full view. Because of my recording settings here, you can't see all of my screen, so when I press Command 0, the canvas window escapes the recording area, but it is functioning properly. Keep the shortcut memorized, as it will come in handy as you keep working with images in Photoshop. Before we go any further, let's save our work. At this point, I will want to create a new copy of this file so I don't destroy the original image I opened. To create a new copy of your work, that is, to save it as a new file, you go to File and Save As. As we have discussed before, we want our in-progress work to be saved as a Photoshop document. So I will make sure I have Photoshop selected as the file format from this drop-down list. I will name my file Water-Revision1, and I will select the location where I want it saved. Next, we will look at how we can touch up our image by using some of Photoshop's tools. You see that there are a lot of spots on your image because this was an old photograph with blemishes, which was then scanned into the computer. To quickly get rid of blemishes like this, you can go to the toolbox and select the Spot Healing Brush tool. When I select it and go over my canvas, you can see that my cursor is represented by a small circle. This indicates the size of the area I will affect when I click down on the canvas. This tool, as many other tools we will encounter, has the nature of a brush, and it therefore has what is referred to as brush settings. This means I can adjust the size of the brush, the hardness of the brush, and other options along these lines. For now, let's go to our control bar to adjust the size of this brush. I will scroll the size slide bar, and by hovering my cursor over the canvas, you can see how the size has changed. When you are happy with your selection, you can close this drop-down panel. You can change the blend mode of this tool, which acts similar to how blend modes work in the Layers window, and we also have a few more options here. I will select the Content Aware option. Let's go ahead and click with the Spot Healing brush over these specks and see what happens. This tool with the Content Aware setting looks around the area where I have clicked, it becomes aware of the content, and it gets rid of blemishes by trying to replicate what the surrounding pixels look like. Let's do the same for a few other blemishes until we're satisfied with the results. To treat some smaller blemishes, like this one right here, I will adjust my brush size, this time by using the keyboard shortcut. Left square bracket for smaller brush size and right square bracket for larger brush size. I will make my brush smaller and I will zoom into the image with Command+. To navigate around the image, I will press spacebar on the keyboard and then click and drag to the blemish I want to focus on. I think I will adjust my brush size a bit more, and now I can click over the blemish. That looks good. I can now zoom out of the image and at the same time fit to the window by pressing Command 0. Because my screen is actually larger than the recording area, I will just use Command- until I can fit the image in the area that you can view, and I'm now ready for more manipulation. Let's establish the good habit of saving our work by pressing Command S on our keyboard or by going to the main menu and select File, Save. Now let's look at the black and white levels in our image. We can see that it is an image with a lot of contrast, containing a lot of dark areas and fewer very bright areas. To examine the black and white information in an image, we can open the Levels window in Photoshop by going to Image on the main menu, Adjustments, and then Levels. The Levels dialog box revolves around the histogram, which is a graphical representation of the distribution of pixels at various levels of gray in an image. 0 represents no color, that's black in grayscale, and 255 represents full color, white in grayscale. The in-between 0 and 255 are various levels of gray. So a graph that is heavy on the left side of this distribution shows us that we have a lot of dark areas in the image, whereas if the graph is heavy on the right side of the distribution, indicates that we have a lot of light areas in our image. The histogram for the specific image shows us exactly that. We have very dark and very light values and not much pixel information in between, what we would visually see as gray in the image. Now the histogram comes with a slider and 3 handles, which we can grab and move. The left handle can adjust the dark areas of the image, the right one the light areas of the image, and the middle one adjusts the gray areas. To undo any changes within a particular dialog box, instead of canceling out of it, we can press Option on the keyboard, which will convert the Cancel button into a Reset button. This will reset everything in this window to the original values. This time, instead of grabbing the handles on the slider, I can grab on one of these eyedrop tools. The rightmost eyedrop tool can be used to target a point in the image that should be set to pure white. By doing this, you can already see that the image improved a bit. Let's now grab the eyedrop tool for the pure black values. I can use it to target one of the darkest areas of the image, which should ideally be pure black. Now the image got even more contrast, which makes it look sharper. By establishing some pure black and some pure white in your photos, you will get them looking sharper and less dull. After establishing the black and whites in your image, you can still adjust the gray levels by using the middle handle on the histogram slider until you're satisfied with the results, at which point you can click OK. Before we go any further, you will have to take a brief quiz on the information we've covered so far. Now, let's look at our image again and zoom into the center. We see that there is a guy hiding behind the woman who's obviously not meant to be seen. Let's try to remove him from the photo. First, let's select his figure. There are multiple methods to select areas of your image in Photoshop, and we will cover most of them in the following weeks. But for now, let's start with one of the more rudimentary selection methods, the Lasso Tool. Go to the toolbar and grab this tool that looks like a lasso. Now we can click and drag around the figure of the man to select him. As you can see, it is very difficult to make accurate selections with the Lasso Tool because it requires accurate freehand work. But for the purpose of this demo, it will be fine. Selections in Photoshop will appear as marching ants, which is what this flashing line is. If you don't get a selection you're satisfied with, you can deselect by pressing Command D on your keyboard, or by going to the main menu and under Select, clicking on Deselect. You will also see next to each operation under our menu, the corresponding shortcut is listed. You will want to memorize some of the most common ones you see so you can work more efficiently without having to move around your mouse too much. So once you deselect the selection you're not satisfied with, you can continue with the Lasso Tool and drag around the man and select him again. Now let's go to the toolbar and grab the Clone Stamp tool. This tool takes 2 steps to operate. First, you will target an area of your image you want to replicate, and then paint over an area of your image that you want to cover up. To target, we will press Option on the keyboard, which will convert our cursor to a little target symbol. With Option held down, we will click in the neighboring area outside of our selection, and then after we let go of the Option key, we will use the Clone Stamp tool like a brush to paint inside our selection. Because this tool also works like a brush, you can adjust the brush size again by pressing left or right square bracket on your keyboard. So let's paint in our selection, and you can see that we're painting over the man with pixel information that we targeted earlier. Let's deselect by pressing Command D, and we can see that the man is gone. Now, this is not quite there yet because with our selection and the brushing we did, there is a harsh line defining the area we manipulated. Let's continue using the Clone Stamp tool, adjust the brush size if needed, and target pixels from the area near the harsh line but not too close to it either, because we don't want the Clone Stamp tool to start replicating the harsh line. After we target by pressing Option and clicking, let's start painting over the harsh line, and you should be able to start seeing it go away. You can target once more and paint, and then target again in another area to paint over other sections you wish to finesse more. You can zoom out to see what the result looks like at the size your image will be seen at 100% magnification, and if you're happy with your progress so far, you can do another save to make sure you don't lose the work you've done. So Command S or File Save on the main menu. Now, aside from using the Clone Stamp tool for fixing up an image, you may want to use it in more fun ways. You don't need to make a selection area before using the Clone Stamp tool like we did before in our effort to do a cleanup of our image. So you can pick up the Clone Stamp tool from the toolbox, target the face of the woman by holding down the Option key on the keyboard, and once you let go of the Option key, go over to these flashes of white and paint over them, the woman's face. I will do it once more. And there you go. Feel free to play around with these tools we've learned so far, with the exercise files or with your own images, so you can start getting comfortable with how these work.